It will be a packed house. A series that started in 1904. Oklahoma's won 4 straight. They've won 88 of the 100.
And on that Saturday when OU was playing OSU, everybody's in that living room watching that TV.
You get an understanding just based on media coverage, the fact that people are talking about it on campus, that it's a pretty important game.
Sanders has got some room. Sanders to the 20-yard line.
There were some big victories during '76, and but I think probably the contributing factor was the defeat of Oklahoma.
Hill with the speed. Look out! This is Bedlam.
As he was being run out of bounds.
Jalen Saunders picks up blocks.
I root for where I went to school, and when they play each other, I'm going to be pulling for Oklahoma State.
If you go game by game or era by era, we've had some tremendous, exciting, close games.
Bedlam, the end of an era. Sponsored by Lucky Star Casino.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Bedlam, End of an Era. For the next hour, we're going to be taking a look at one of the most storied rivalries in college football and really just sports in general, because, Curtis, whenever you get Oklahoma and Oklahoma State together in anything, it's a big deal. Of course, with the game coming up on Saturday, we're talking football.
Yeah, Bedlam, it's an iconic name, not just here, but nationally. When you say Bedlam in New York, people will tell you, oh yeah, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State. It's a cool nickname. It's unfortunate we're getting rid of this game. We would love it to continue, obviously.
Yeah.
I know Myron and I are big champions for the game. But yeah, listen, this is a different deal. When you have two teams that are in the state, when people have to live with each other on a daily basis for the entire year, it's a big deal. And the fact that this is the final one, well, then you're going to be talking about this game, this one result, for a long time.
The history of this game, it started 3 years before statehood. No, in 1904, they played in Guthrie. Oklahoma won the game 75-0, the first of their 91 wins. Of course, Oklahoma State's won 19 times. There have been 7 ties. Cowboys' first win came 13 years later in Oklahoma City by a 9-0 count. Cowboys' last win just 2 years ago, 37-33. Everybody remembers that. Lincoln Riley left for USC after that. Sooners won last season by a 28-13 final. But that's just part of the history. I got Mr. History to give us more.
Since 1910, Myron, since 1910 we played them. This will be 114 consecutive years we played Oklahoma State.
It's one of those series, Oklahoma's dominated, I'd say the last 15 years or so, 20 years. It's become pretty competitive. Oklahoma still won the games, but it's become very competitive.
It makes no sense if you look at the records. Oklahoma's won 91 times. They're 91 wins, 19 losses, 7 ties during that 117 games with 1 to play. Now, but get this, and you go back to World War II, and right after World War II in 1946, we go 50 years, and we lose 2 games to Oklahoma State. We tie 1 during that 50-year span. It's been all Oklahoma, but the series is much closer. For those 117 games with 118 coming, we've had 37 games, 1 possession games, and 37. That is the second most against any school that Oklahoma's played. The only other one with more 1 possession games, Texas.
Wow.
But Oklahoma State is second there. I think we're at 17 wins since, since Coach Gundy's been there, and even Coach Miles before that.
So the games are that close, that tells you it means something to both sides.
Hey, let me tell you how much it means to both sides, especially the Oklahoma sides. You don't lose to Oklahoma State. You don't. You go back to 1944, 1945. Oklahoma State has 2 great seasons. Oklahoma loses both those games. They lose they lost bad in 44. 1945, they lose 47-0 at Owen Field, last game of the season. Their coach, OU's coach, Snorter Lester, 3 days later, he got fired. That's not the first time it's happened. You go to 65, when one of the worst seasons for OU for sure. They went 3-7, but they lost the last game to Oklahoma State. 5 days after the season was over, Coach Gomer Jones, he gets fired. If you go to 1995, when Snellenberger got shut out 12-0, 12-0. This is our next to last game. We played Nebraska the week after in and we lose 37-0. He basically got fired after back-to-back losses. But the Oklahoma State game was the game. I mean, Nebraska was at a national championship level.
Yeah.
Oklahoma says it's not a rivalry. They've had 3 coaches basically get fired by losing to Oklahoma State at the wrong time, for sure.
I tell you what, Mike Brooks is a wealth of information, giving me some of the stuff you really didn't know about this series, Curtis.
I mean, he knows more than any of us, so if you ever run into him, just ask him a question about the history of Bedlam, OU football, he'll tell you.
The name Gundy is also big in Bedlam. Whether it's Mike or Cale, that's a tease to our next block.
It's historic rivalry. It's probably the groundwork of college football. Kind of sad to see it go.
Play defense. First and goal from the 7. Bell, threat to run, particularly with a timeout left. He throws, far corner of the end zone. Saunders again, touchdown.
All right, welcome back. When you're talking Oklahoma and Oklahoma State in football, the name Gundy comes up.
Gundy, Mike Gundy. I have some vivid memories of Mike in Bedlam, but Cale also, the first game he ever played as OU's quarterback, the Cale Merrimeyer at halftime, threw the touchdown to Adrian Cooper, one of the more memorable plays.
You mentioned Mike, of course, still the head coach at Oklahoma State, once a player, assistant coach. Cale, big-time quarterback. He said, I'm going to Oklahoma. That's just one of many things that tied him to Bedlam.
Boy, that's a big question that would have a huge answer, because there's so much more to it that really doesn't have to do with my brother and I. You know, I mean, we've had nieces that played softball, 2 at OU and 1 at OSU. Obviously, Gunner's playing now up there. My son and daughter both went to OU. You know, my dad went to OSU. My mom went to OU. My sister went to OSU. So, you know, I mean, it's literally been in our blood for a long time. Now, we all grew up Sooner fans in our household. We are all diehard Sooner fans. And
Mike said, "Don't put that out there."
Mike
said, "Don't put that out there."
Well, that's the truth, whether he wants to admit it or not. I mean, I remember sitting in that house. You know, first of all, his 4th official visit, he comes back from OU's official visit, and Coach Switzer had him in that office for 2 hours, wouldn't let him leave until he committed. So Mike comes home on Sunday night and tells us, yeah, I committed, and kind of tells us the story. And the next weekend, his 5th visit, he goes to OSU and comes home on that visit and comes in there and tells us that he changed his mind. He's going to go to Oklahoma State. And I think I cried for 2 weeks. And but everything turned out great for him. Everything turned out great for me. I mean, he is where he is because of what he did there. I am where I am, and the opportunities I've gotten in life because of the choices I made to play at OU and to coach there and be around great people.
Now, I remember you're in Midwest City. You're 16 or something. I'm in my early days of television. Mm-hmm. You said you're not going to OSU, but I couldn't tell anybody.
Yeah.
How tough was that?
You know, I just didn't never have it in me to want to play football at Oklahoma State. You know, whether you remember or not, I was a baseball player also.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I seriously considered going there to play baseball because Oklahoma State back in the days they were one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the country. You know, I did not know I was going to go to OU. I really didn't. I made the decision, a big decision of, hey, if I go to this place, which is the great school in the state of Oklahoma, the powerhouse Oklahoma, and do things right and have a chance to play and have success and meet the right people, I will benefit from it someday. And I have.
What was it like that first game? Because you watched your brother become, you know, at the time, he was the best quarterback Oklahoma State had. They had great success with Barry Sanders, Thurman Thomas, Hartley Dykes. You played that first game at, I guess it was still Lewis Field at that time.
Yeah.
What was it like to play there in that game?
It was different. You know, I was 17 years old still. I wasn't 18 yet. That was my true freshman year in 1990. And, you know, Mike was hired by Pat Jones earlier that spring, or you know, back in January, February, or whenever, to be a tight end coach, a full-time assistant coach, straight out of college. So it was, you know, when you're young, you don't really get caught up in some of the things that the older you get, you really tend to think about different things. You know, I'm just so used to playing ball. You know, I can remember when we were kids growing up, if there was 12 players, 10 of them were my brother's age. They were all four years older than me. And there'd always be 1 or 2 that were my age. But it didn't matter. I was always the quarterback on one team and my brother was on the other. So we've been butting heads and going at it forever. And it's been really neat.
Cale Gundy, a great athlete, multi-sport star, and it was a big deal when he decided to come to Oklahoma, Myron.
It definitely was, and that's just part of the story. He's got a really good story about a Bedlam game where he was an assistant coach. You remember the Tyreek Hill return? You're going to want to hear this story. That's coming up after the break.
Bedlam is an opportunity to show everybody that regardless of record, regardless of who's best, we want to win that game. And it's sort of like that for all year long. That's what we're looking forward to. When Tyreek Hill ran that punt back and beat them at Norman.
Barnett sends a good one. Hill has it. Tyreek Hill with speed. Breaks through. Hill with the speed. Look out. This is Bedlam.
All right, welcome back. Curtis, the thing about talking about Cale, he's always got some great stories.
Yeah. They can tell. All the Gundys can tell stories. And there's one I know that caught your attention.
Yeah, Tyreek Hill, we'll get to that. But also, he has some interesting perspective on players. Did they have to do some things to make sure they were up for? Because younger guys may not know the history. We talked to him about that.
You know, that's your rival. I mean, you know, back then it was even different than it is nowadays. But, you know, back then it was just, you know, there wasn't Oklahoma City Thunder. You know, there wasn't social media.
No.
There wasn't all this stuff that we have nowadays where people can kind of get carried away and drifted in different directions. You know, the OU-OSU game was always one of the biggest games. I mean, you know, when you're kids growing up, you know, there's always, you know, typically everybody had that one TV in the household. And on that Saturday when OU was playing OSU, everybody's in that living room watching that TV. And regardless of the success that OU's had in the tradition and in the rivalry, it was always a special game. And a lot, I think, more so to me because I was an Oklahoma kid, and there were a lot of Oklahoma kids on the roster from Oklahoma State. A lot of kids that I grew up playing ball against, whether they were, you know, whether it's football in high school or whether it was baseball or summer baseball. And so you had more relationships because growing up in the same state as a lot of those players from OSU.
All those years of coaching, was the game still as big for the younger guys of this generation? Did you have, especially the guys that weren't from Oklahoma, guys, because Oklahoma's a national school, they're getting players from all over the country. Did you ever have to kind of educate guys that today, hey, this is a big game, they kind of know that?
I always felt like that we really had to talk it into them sometimes. You know, back then when I was playing, a coach didn't need to talk to us about the importance of this game. And I said that to a lot of people, and a lot of people sometimes don't understand what I'm saying. When you play and coach at OU, you're there to win championships. You're there to play for championships. And I've always said this, and some people say, well, you can't. I mean, there's more games that are bigger than others, but every game is a huge game, because if you lose one of those games or two of those games, there's a chance that you're not going to play in a championship that year. So every game's important. As a coach, you know, as the years have gone by, we really had to pump it in our players. Our players knew it was a big game, but we really, as a coaching staff throughout the week, made it a really, really big deal to play Oklahoma State.
Any one game, player or coach, that stands out that you really got your memory, got you charged up? Stand out.
Oh gosh, you know, I've had so many of them, and so many of our games have been so close. You know, I could give you probably 6 or 8 or 10.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, the few that OSU won, you know, really bothered you.
Yeah.
You know, the Blake Bell game where he came in and played quarterback, and we won at the last minute, and he threw the corner out to Jalen Saunders, was very special. And then just a lot of individual, you know, my mind's spinning right now just thinking of so many individual plays throughout the course of, you know, the games that we had.
Tyreek Hill returned a punt.
Oh my gosh. I will have to tell you, I'm gonna be honest with you, and not all Sooner fans know this, but I was one of the coaches that was helped Bob make that decision to punt again to them.
Oh.
And I don't mind coming clean now. I don't. But Bob asked on the headset, he goes, do we need to punt it again? And I was like, hell yes, because we haven't stopped them all day. I don't care where the ball is. They're going to go down and score. I don't care if there's 40 seconds. They're going to go down and score. And, you know, what had happened in that situation was we had worked so hard on punt team for probably 2 or 3 weeks before that when you're inside the 50-yard line, every punt goes to the left corner. Every punt goes to the left corner. Every punt goes to the left corner. Every punt in practice goes to the left corner. Everybody. So when the gunners run down there, they know where that ball's going. If that guy runs over there, you ignore him. You go to the left corner. And we harped a huge, huge deal about that for weeks, for games leading up to. And sure enough, we came back and punted again. That ball went to the right. Tyreek went to the right. Our gunners, they went to the left, because we had been harping over the weeks that don't follow that guy. He's going to try to drag you away. And sure enough, that was history. So, but, you know, again, the Blake Bell, you know, the other Blake Bell at home, you know, went in there in the last seconds. You know, the Joe Mixon's, some of his plays.
Adrian running over everybody.
Adrian Peterson, you know, the toss sweep to the left and him spinning and going 80. You know, just a lot of great moments. The DeMarco Murray's, DeMarco Murray's, yes, and the Chris Browns. Man, just special, special moments.
Listen, Cale, Mike Gundy, the Gundy name definitely synonymous with Bedlam, and one of those games that Mike was a part of, 1988, Myron. I think we're all going to remember that one for a long time.
Yeah, this series has a bunch of games. In fact, one of the toughest things about putting this together is how do you narrow which games to pick? Well, the 88 game, the battle of running backs, it definitely makes the cut. You'll hear from that after the break. You can't talk Bedlam football without talking about one Barry Sanders. We have teleported to Stillwater after being in Norman for the first part of the show to talk some Bedlam 1988, a game that, of course, featured two of the best running backs in the country that day, Barry Sanders and, of course, Mike Gaddis of Oklahoma.
It was a battle. ESPN was here, and it really was a showcase for Barry Sanders on the national stage. Mike Gaddis, though, emerged as a star as well, like you said. And I mean, it's still today, Myron, probably my favorite Bedlam game because of all the things that happened. And Mike Gundy, of course, was a big part of it. So, yeah, I can't wait.
It's a heck of a game that, of course, quarterbacks that day were Mike Gundy, of course, the current head coach for the Cowboys, and Charles Thompson. November 5th, 1988, a typical windy day at Lewis Field in Stillwater. Charles Thompson ran OU's wishbone, while Mike Gundy was OSU's quarterback. But the game turned into a duel of running backs, with Oklahoma's Mike Gaddis and OSU's Barry Sanders exchanging turns
ripping off big-time runs.
One of the things that I remember most, Myron, is the one thing that's really kind of different is, obviously Mike was a very quiet, spirited guy, but very confident. And, he would always say, Charlie, pitch me the ball. He would mock me because Switzer was the only one who really called me Charlie. But Gaddis would always kind of tease me when on the field, Charlie, you know where I'm going to be at. So that day, he just had an unbelievable day of kind of announcing himself to college football that here I am. Great guy that came out of Colorado High School.
Gaddis started fast, but Sanders showed why he would later win the Heisman Trophy that season.
Barry Sanders is a different animal. I never forget one of the most impressive runs that happened in that game of the many that he had was really about a 3-yard loss, Myron. And he made this move right in front of us on our sideline. And he shot, kind of shrunk down like a little mushroom and shot sideways, what should have been a 7-yard loss. He made it in the 3, and I turned to one of my teammates, I said, you don't understand what you just saw right there. That was greatness. He was just so explosive and unbelievable. His thighs, his legs, his balance, just unlike any running back that I've ever seen. It was obviously a great day.
Both backs went over 200 yards rushing, with Sanders finishing with 215 and Gaddis with 213. But it's the ending that created the controversy and memories, with OSU trailing by 3, but with a chance to win at the end.
Gundy has got Parker. Oh, he dropped it! Brent Parker dropped the football.
Ultimately, people talk about the Brent Parker, which that ball was tipped, Myron. I'm going to tell you that.
Kevin Thompson says that. Did you really get a piece of that or not?
No, listen, we slowed it down in slow motion because obviously we all, as teammates, was back watching then. We said, Kevin, we told you not to let anyone behind you, and he gave him a hard time. And so he obviously produced the film, he was watching it, and put it in slow motion. Although he barely got a fingertip on it, Myron, it did change the rotation of the ball, which obviously helped aid in the fact that Parker wasn't able to catch it.
Now, OSU fans out there saying, wait a minute, what about Garrett Limbrick? He got a personal foul penalty on that drive that pushed them back on that same drive. Do you think the officials made the right call there?
Well, I've learned even in today's time, you can never question. I run Little League football. Trust me, Mara, I get this question all the time about officials this, officials that. Yeah. And obviously, you got to respect what they think they see. And so, obviously, on that day, at that particular time, they thought it was a personal foul. So I'm living with that.
A very young-looking Charles Thompson, Myron, from that 1988 game. The Thompson family has a lot of ties to the Bedlam game. Kendall Thompson played for Oklahoma against Oklahoma State here in Stillwater.
No doubt about it. Of course, there's been a lot of big plays made by Cowboys in this series. Rashawn Woods, of course, he had some memorable plays in this series. I'll tell you what, there's one Bedlam fan that remembers one play in particular.
The 2001 Bedlam game in Norman.
Today, the 4th-ranked Oklahoma Sooners play host to the Oklahoma State Cowboys in the 96th edition of the Bedlam series.
My wife and I had been married just for a couple years, and we went to that game, and we were sitting in the end zone with one of my best buddies.
Fields. He's got it. Wide open. Out of bounds.
That was the Josh Fields to Rashawn Woods.
Fields, fade corner. Rashawn Woods, jump ball, touchdown Oklahoma State. Pulled it on Derek Strait. Woods coming down with it.
OU was, I think, ranked 1 or 2 in the country, and Oklahoma, I'd been out of school, I guess, for about 5 years at that point. And we came back and won the game, just totally unexpected. It was just amazing game. Les Miles was the coach at OSU at the time, and that was a really cool memory. And then just over the years, OU's just has such a tradition. So those memories for OSU winning are few and far between.
From the 26. Only a 3-man rush. Hibble using a ton of time. Up for grabs it goes. And it's intercepted. That'll do it.
It's going to be a great last Bedlam. If it is the last Bedlam, it's going to be a great matchup in Stillwater. I'm talking to fans. Maybe we should pass a law to make them play every year. Unfortunate for fans, but I'm excited to go to the SEC and play some new teams down there, and excited for the opportunities that OSU is going to have to step up and be the leader of the Big 12. And so I think it's a great opportunity for both schools, and hopefully we can get this game back going again at some point in the future.
When it comes to Bedlam and being recruited in state, I don't think there's a bigger battle than for Rashawn Woods, a guy that Oklahoma tried to recruit. Oklahoma State got him, which meant Donovan and DeJuan came with him, but Rashawn started things off.
Yeah, and obviously the Woods family in Bedlam, as you saw, it's a great tradition. Rashawn, one of the good guys too. I've had a chance to work with him in the sports animal, but before he moved to Texas to become a head coach down there, and he loves Oklahoma State.
Yes, he does, and of course he is now in the head coaching business down in Tyler, Texas. Had a chance to conversate with him about this storied rivalry. 2000, of course, Oklahoma was on their way to a national championship undefeated, but you guys were just a throw away from upsetting them in Stillwater. That was incomplete. Then the next year in 2001, you play in Norman, and you catch the winning touchdown to beat Oklahoma and send them to the Cotton Bowl that year.
That's right. Yeah. And so as a redshirt freshman, that year, Marcellus Rivers had the ball knocked away by Derek Strait, I believe, to secure Oklahoma's national title bid. Again, every one of those years, it was very special. That particular year, I actually had a couple passes that I caught on the way, moving us down to have a chance to win that game. And just being close with a team, the caliber of Oklahoma at the time, I mean, they were on another level. And seeing those guys and having the chance to compete with those guys was a special moment. And then having a chance to win, and then finally winning in 2001 and then do it again in 2002 is something that, a lot of people remember and really enjoy it as Cowboy fans.
And you on another level, because in 2002, I think a lot of Oklahoma fans, the coaching staff, they said they owed you one because you'd beaten Oklahoma in 2001 with your touchdown catch. Game was in Stillwater, but Oklahoma had another really good team, a really good defensive team. But I think you're still open, Rashawn. You were running through that secondary all day long, catching passes that day. You were on another level that day.
Yeah, and you hear that a lot. But the reality of it is that not only me, I was the tail end of good execution on the offensive side. I mean, we ran the ball in those games that we won. We ran the ball pretty well. They were top 5, I think, in 2001 against the rush, and we were able to have some success running the football. Not a whole lot, but enough success that gave me an opportunity or allowed me to get some space down the field. In 2002, we ran the ball extremely well against them, which was just critical. And getting open down the field, it's all tied together. And fortunately for us, we were pretty efficient throwing the football as well, which you got to have those things when you're playing a team of that caliber, regardless of the game. But the fact that we were able to put it together in 2001, specifically, when most of the year we weren't able to do it for 4 quarters. But in 2002, we were really hitting our stride at that moment when we ran into the Sooners.
How much education went on for the Oklahoma guys? Yourself, Josh Fields was your quarterback, and he was an Oklahoma guy as well. You got a lot of Texas guys as well, Tatum Bell, people like that. How much education did you guys have to do to the guys who were not Oklahomans to let them know how big a game this really was?
Well, people figure it out, regardless of what state you're from. If you're on a football team and you hear the noise, you get an understanding. You get an understanding just based on media coverage, the fact that people are talking about it on campus, that it's a pretty important game.
You were an All-American first-round draft pick of the 49ers. You had 3,000-yard seasons while at Oklahoma State, a bunch of big games, bowl games, things of that nature. Do OSU fans talk to you more about your entire career or the Bedlam wins?
When Bedlam comes around, that's a game that everybody talks about. That special day and that special game, those 2 special years for Oklahoma State is something that it's probably the top game in Oklahoma State history when you consider the Bedlam. And so people really remember that part of it. But because of that, my career as a whole is particularly remembered. There's a lot of good memories for me, but also a lot of Oklahoma State fans, a lot of guys that I play with, they have their own great memories, and me being a part of those memories as well is something that we get a chance to talk about every year. And really, this year will be the last for the foreseeable future.
Rashawn, good luck, man. Good hearing from you, man. Take care.
Thank you, sir.
It's fun to talk to Rashawn. He's doing a great job coaching down at Tyler, and he's definitely got some great memories, man.
Yeah, and I will always remember where I was when he made that catch against Oklahoma and just how shocking that game was. I'll never forget that feeling afterwards, thinking, how did Oklahoma State win that game? But they did.
Yeah, he made a name for himself. Of course, this is also a series where the coaches make a name for themselves as well. We'll talk some coaches right after the short break. All right, you know, we spent a lot of time talking about players that have played in this series, but the coaches have played major roles in this. And of course, from Oklahoma side, Barry Switzer comes to mind, a guy that was very obviously won a bunch of games, but always came up with that one play that you need to win a game like this.
No, he obviously knew how to win the Bedlam game. Bob Stoops had a great record against Oklahoma State, and really, you know, that first big Bedlam game for Bob was in 2000. A game that saved the national championship. Derek Strait makes the play here in Stillwater, and you thought, all right, Oklahoma was going to roll in here, maybe win the game easily. It did not happen, but they won, and it helped preserve the championship. And then he had some other big Bedlam moments. So, yeah, big name coaches here.
Of course, Jimmy Johnson, of course, made his national name with the Dallas Cowboys, but of course he did a really good job here. Didn't have the talent that Oklahoma had when he was going up against Switzer, but let people know what kind of coach he would be. Pat Jones was the winningest coach of all time at Oklahoma State till a guy who was his quarterback he hired straight off the playing field, Mike Gundy, hired him that spring to be his assistant coach, and of course he's in his 19th year coaching at Oklahoma State.
Yeah, I mean, Pat kind of led to the Mike Gundy experience. Pat, like you said, brought him here, and Gundy's been a part of so many games, so many Oklahoma State games, and yeah, I have fond memories of Pat and Mike Gundy games here.
And Pat Jones wants a timeout.
Outside of Mike Gundy, no other Cowboy head coach took part in more Bedlam games than Pat Jones.
I went through this a bunch. Now, growing up in this part of the country, obviously I had observed it from afar, you know, and then being an active participant in it, I did 16 times.
Now an analyst for 97.1 The Sports Animal here in Tulsa, Jones uses that unique insight to look ahead to this weekend, the last guaranteed meeting between the schools.
Early in the season, you know, Oklahoma State gets drilled by South Alabama. And then, you know, and here OU's doing what they're doing. And now, you know, Oklahoma State's kind of making a move. So this game could, you know, it's kind of adding up to be another fairly high stakes ball game.
Coach Jones had a deep archive of Bedlam memories, but the one that stood out most, his very first as the Polk HC in 1984.
Hilja throws it in the end zone. Touchdown. I don't believe it.
A meeting he says changed the national perception of the game.
Both teams are real good. Both teams are playing for, you know, a high national ranking. Normally before there had been one team playing for a high national ranking. That was OU.
Other matchups popped in his head, like that next year, the infamous Ice Bowl of '85.
And kicking a field goal in this kind of conditions.
And a historic performance from a Hall of Fame tailback.
The field was solid ice, so we go and have to play the game. And some of maybe one of the best performances I've ever seen off either team. Thurman Thomas somehow got over 100 yards on a sheet of ice. You know, I mean, kickers slipping and falling down. They hit a couple of field goals and beat us in a close game again.
And, of course, some memories that still sting the now 76-year-old head coach, like the heartbreak in '88.
I remember there was we have the ball down on their end of the field. There was a kind of a confrontation over on their sideline. Larry Coker's upstairs. Larry says, "This doesn't sound good, Coach." Well, they called a 15-yard personal foul on us for cussing at one of them. We got to throw a Hail Mary. Mike starts running around, fires one down there, and, you know, from the sidelines, I can see it go through the hands of one of their defenders. Brent Parker, one of our receivers, sure-handed kid. It hits Brent right in the tummy and bounces out.
Gundy has got Parker. Oh, he dropped it!
I mean, we slam drop one, we're going to win the game at that point in time, and you're thinking, wait a minute now, this can't be this way. There was enough bizarre things that went on in this ball game that, particularly when the stakes got real high.
Fast forward to present day, Jones not holding anything back on the game he spent nearly 2 decades playing a significant role in.
And I still wonder to this day, is this a series or a rivalry? Again, 91-19-7 does not indicate rivalry. I mean, I'm just being honest about it.
Now, as Bedlam as we know it comes to a close, Coach Jones doesn't expect the Cowboys to eagerly jump back in.
From the Oklahoma State standpoint, I don't think they need to play them unless it's in the postseason. When that game's played in Stillwater, they're going to draw. I mean, it'll be a lot of OU people. But how is not having that on your season ticket package going forward going to affect that? I don't think it'll have a great effect now, and maybe it would at one time or another. But I think from the Oklahoma State standpoint, I don't know if they need to play this game unless it's in postseason.
Of course, Oklahoma State, they like to call themselves tailback U. They think of Sanders, they think of Thomas, but there's a guy named Terry Miller who's a pretty good running back as well. We're going to hear from him next, coming up right after the break.
I've been, part of Bedlam since as a student or as a fan since 1986. Anyway, so I've been to every home game we've had for Bedlam since 1990. So that's right. And being from Oklahoma, right? You're either orange or you're either red. Anyway, and you're probably sitting next to somebody at work who's wearing the other color. Anyway, so it's important. Every year it's important.
Raising rain and snow, you can see that. Temperature 27 degrees, expected to drop dramatically in the next several hours. The wind, they say, is 8 miles per hour, and it certainly feels like it's more than that. But the fellows down on the field are the ones that are going to take the licks and give them, and they're here to play a game.
It's hard to hold on to the ball, I understand that, but it's a lot harder when somebody nails you like Mark Moore does. Watch what number 44 does here to Holloway. He comes in, that's a hit.
Now, if they don't make it here, you might think of field goal and kicking a field goal in this kind of condition. For Oklahoma State, and it's 4th down and 5. They got to do it here. Check that 4th and 15. Williams is going to run. Now he's going to throw, and he threw it right into the hands of an Oklahoma man. Mediazzo, he couldn't hold on to it. Barry Switzer knows that that's it. They can just run out the clock now. 54 seconds to go.
There's been a lot of talk about what Ollie Gordon has done for Oklahoma State this year, Myron, and it continues a nice run of running backs they've had here at Oklahoma State. Really, it all began, though, probably with Terry Miller.
Yeah, big-time running back in the mid to late 70s, and a guy that was a 5th overall pick by the Buffalo Bills. Terry Miller, I had a chance to sit down and talk with him about his Bedlam experiences. From Colorado Springs, Colorado, you come to Stillwater. Did you even know anything about OU, OSU, Bedlam, anything that when you first got here?
Well, it was kind of funny. Whenever I got here, everybody talked about beating OU, and I'm like, what's the importance of that? And somebody said, hey, if you win one game, beat Oklahoma, we don't care about the rest. And I'm thinking, that's kind of backwards, but having been here for a while now, I get the full meaning of that.
Who educated you? Was it upperclassmen? Was it fans? There was no Twitter or anything like that then. So who educated you what that game meant?
It was little paper airplane notes or something like that. But I think some of the guys that were from Oklahoma, that knew the rivalry and what have you, I didn't really know until my freshman year when we played the Sooners. And I had visited OU, and some of the guys were not very kind to me when they hit me. I think it was Randy Hughes and Myron Cho. Some of those guys hit me, and they said, hey, you should have came here. At that point, I thought, maybe you were right. And they said it was going to be an all-day affair, and it was.
Here's the thing. You finished second in the Heisman, some guy named Earl Campbell, pretty good back. 5th overall pick of the draft by the Buffalo Bills. 3,000-yard seasons at Oklahoma State. All great credentials. I could keep on going. Are you known more for that or a particular run in 1976 down in Norman? Which do Cowboy fans remember you more about?
Miller left half, Taylor right half, and Bingy wide right on a 3rd and 2 from the Cowboy 28. Harold Bailey pitches the ball back to Miller, sweeping, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 45, 20, 35, 30, 25, 20, 15, 10, 5. Touchdown Cowboys!
Well, of the 4,776, let's say, I'd say they remember the run of 76 in Norman. That seems to be the theme, is that, hey, we hold on to those types of things, and I think that's what they probably remember most of all.
You had lost, not you, but the program had lost, I think, 9 in a row at that time. Hadn't beat Oklahoma since 1966. And you guys, you won not only that game, you finished tied for the Big 8 and went to the Tangerine Bowl. But that win over Oklahoma, I think, that was the key to that season, right?
I think that was an important victory for sure, especially after we blew the deal against Colorado on the end zone interception, fumble, recovered. They fumble, we recover, but we don't get it, so we end up in a tie. And I think that there were some big victories during '76, but I think probably the contributing factor was the defeat of Oklahoma.
Do you remember the run? Do you remember who you beat? Can you play back in your mind how you got that 71-yard touchdown run?
You know, there was a lot of things that went right. The execution of the play, number one, and guys that, like I've always said, you know, there were some other people involved in that run. It got me started. Without getting started, it probably wouldn't have happened. And so the guys that were, you know, the receivers and the linemen and of course the quick, very sharp pitch from Harold Bailey, you know, made that all happen.
Have you kept up with the game since then? I mean, your playing days have been over for a while, but you still watch the Bedlam game?
I don't necessarily just watch the Bedlam. I watch all the games that I can, and I'm not a, you know, there's some folks that are in the stands that are pretty intelligent. They know everything. And I'm like, really? Is that what they're going to do? Is that what they should do? So I tend to like to watch it in my chair at home. That way I'm not swayed by opinion.
Well, we hope you enjoyed the last hour as we looked at this series from start to where we are this weekend's game. It's a series where names are made and people remember for years to come.
Yeah, remember the good and the bad. I mean, those names are out there, and hopefully, hey, we'll get more memories down the line. The powers that be will schedule Bedlam in a non-conference format, and we'll get to do it all again.
It's all possible, folks. Enjoy the game.